Okay, now the woes of week 11 here on Walk It Off with Chappy. Got to start in College Station. Now, having grown up in the Woodlands, Texas, I was an Aggie fan. I still try to pull for the Aggies and throw up a gig on whenever I can, but holy smokes, what the HELL is happening down there with Jimbo Fisher's team. They cannot score more than 20 points. They cannot win. They've lost 6 in a row. Inexplicable losses. Granted, they've been relatively close, but then you also look, they're 3-7, 1-6 in the SEC, not going to make it to a bowl, and in that string of 6 losses, they got beat up by Mississippi State, beat up by Ole Miss. Even though they made a comeback and made that game look close, the Rebels kind of had the upper hand in that for most of the time, and they got dominated by Florida. So, you know, where is this offense? I mean, Jimbo Fisher is an offensive-minded guy, and I know that they've had some injuries, and but with all the resources that they've got, with the talent on that roster, especially on that offensive side, Devin Achane, I know Max Johnson got hurt. Connor Wigman is talented. Haynes King, we hear that, how talented and how fast he is. We hear about that offensive line, and I know that they lost their O-line coach, Josh Henson. That was probably the biggest loss, but there's really no string of explanations that can do justice to how far they've fallen. And I look aside from their preseason expectations. Did I expect them to compete for the college football playoff? No. Did I expect them to compete for the SEC West? No, but I sure as hell figured that they would easily make a bowl. They would, if they won 7 games or 8 games, that would be considered a disappointment given, how talented this team is and the crop that they brought in. And again, with all that offseason talk that Jimbo was doing, just expected more from the Aggies. So I won't beat that dead horse anymore. They host UMass this weekend, and that is you better win that game. Otherwise, that's an easy ticket out for Jimbo. Shame on the Big Ten refs in the Illinois-Purdue game. Now, I didn't really have a dog in the fight on that one, even though I took the Illini minus 6.5, I should say. But the referees were not only making bad calls on the defensive pass interference on Devin Witherspoon, also some of the missed calls, but they were allowing the inmates to run the asylum in that game. They allowed rough, excessive tackling, out of bounds, beyond forward progress, and potentially putting players in a position where they may have gotten hurt. Now, I'm not one of those soft people who says that, football is too violent or there's nothing along those lines, but you go whistle to whistle. And when the whistle is not being blown when it should be, and you've got a running back that's being stood up and now he's gang tackled by 6-7 defenders and being run out of bounds, you put that player in a hazardous situation. You also put sideline crew and coaches and sideline players in a hazardous situation. And I get, keep your wits about you, but come on, referees, they got to do much better than what we saw in that game. And I'm one of the last people to cramp about officiating and what the officials do or do not do, but they have to be much better than they were in that. That was embarrassing. Speaking of Illinois, woes for them this past weekend. So not only did they take the loss, that's their second straight home loss, so losing on back-to-back weekends. Now they've pretty much lost control of the Big Ten West. They're going to need some help, but their chances of making it to Indy are not looking nearly as good, especially when they go to Michigan this Saturday, and then they end up in a rivalry game against Northwestern, which, as of right now, on paper, Illinois should beat the Wildcats, but you never know what's going to happen in that post-Thanksgiving rivalry game for any two teams in the country. So, woes for the Illini, and no, I'm not trying to rub it in, all you Illini fans. And then finally, Oklahoma, they lose on the road by giving up over 200 rushing yards to West Virginia. The Sooners are now 5-5. They have to play the Bedlam series against Oklahoma State this weekend, and they also have to play Texas Tech, who will be fighting for a bowl spot. And Joey McGuire's team, they can score points. And one thing we know about Oklahoma is they're not looking good defensively. So if you're a team that can score points, you probably have a slight advantage over that Oklahoma squad that has been a little bit Jekyll and Hyde on the offensive side of the ball, and they've been all Hyde on the defensive side because they basically have been hiding and not coming out to make tackles. Bad pun there, but those are my woes of week 11. Let me know what you think. Thanks for following me on Twitter at ChappyCFB. I'm Chappy. This is what I know.